Hi Nikhil, hi Gokul.
Hi.
So now that you are a pre-Series A funded and fairly large round at that, at a fairly large valuation, tell me what changes for Sinder?
I'll go first. We'll talk in length about the vision and how this funding becomes a critical catalyst for us to achieve our vision. But most importantly, this funding gives us the much required initial capital to set the right kind of processes and machinery in place that allows us to behave and operate like a global company, solving a globally challenging deep tech problem. In solving this challenge, which has been plaguing the robotics world, the manufacturing world, and the robotics and the machine vision world, so to speak, for close to 4 decades now, we've of course built a lot of fundamental technology. We've managed to crack some of the most challenging algorithmic problems that are out there in the field of AI and ML and vision and robotics. But it's also important for us to realize is that it takes a whole lot more and a whole lot of organizational machinery to take this technology out and make this a reality in the real world. And that requires systematic investment in processes, in machinery, in people, in technology and talent that we are going to focus on and concentrate on to put together. And this can start from how we build a machinery for, let's say, content and branding and marketing, all the way to how we manage our operations and finances and our logistics. We are a hardware and software play, so there's significant amount of investment in the infrastructure related to dealing with the magnitude of money that we translocate or money that we transpire between us and between our vendors, pull the entire ecosystem together, which includes not just our customers and our talent and our investors, but also the ecosystem, which includes the vendors and the partners that need to come together for making this a reality. So we're going to be systematically putting in place these infrastructure that we believe will be the seed to scaling this organization into a global multinational company.
Got this. Gokul, you want to add something?
So I want to just think from uh, more than what we have as an aim for execution, just as where this is coming from, right? So what it is enabling. This is the money that we wanted 3 years back, right? This is where we ideally need to have begun from, right? But that's different, right? So you want certain commodities to run your organization. There are certain components that you need for an organization to move. Money is one of those components that is actually there, and that now that it's a milestone which cash is a component that allows you to do things, right? It comes before you achieve something. It enables you to achieve something, and what we are going to achieve is going to change based on the quantum that we get and what we want to get. Now we have come to a phase and the position where this cash allows us to execute certain portions of the vision, right? All this while we were doing proof on the possibility that this is worth executing, right? All this point we were telling the market, we were telling the people, we were telling everybody, right? The whole ecosystem on which an organization needs to be dependent upon, be it the vendors, customers, and the future employees and current employees, right? And the investors who have invested early on and the investors who want to invest tomorrow, right? So the whole ecosystem, the stakeholder, outsider and insider. There's an outsider in perspective, an insider out perspective. That all of that actually comes together. So from all of them to all the ecosystem, whatever that we were supposed to move and make them invest in us, make them see that, hey, this is going to see the light of the day, right? Take it to the point where we are able to showcase the value and the utility for what we are building. This far, we have been only showing the possibility. Hey, look at us, we have built this. This can be used so and so way. This can be done so and so way. So you can find applications here and here. So I have a robotic arm with a vision and how it can transform, how you are. It's all about in the speech it has been. And trying to show in-lab videos, right? And in-lab demonstrations and very closed room demonstrations that we were doing. Now we are going to go open, right? We're going to go open. we are going to start executing. It was gracious enough that there are a lot of customers who are waiting on us, right? And I need to be really, really thankful to those customers who have actually spent the time. Some actually have waited almost 2 to 3 years, right? Even before we went into raising the seed fund, right? In fact, it happened because of their conviction in us, right? But that's a machinery. A customer is not an individual; it's an organization for us as a B2B, right? We are not a B2C as of yet. We'll get there someday. That's the big dream, but we are a B2B, right? So that organization, to have an whole organization trust and wait, it's a huge thing, right? That says how important is this problem to solve, right? Whether they articulated it right, whether they had the platform to articulate it right is secondary question, because you are not hearing it, maybe because they don't have the voice or they couldn't comment, but they did have the commitment. Now we have to go deliver it, right? And to deliver, it's never, you can have the idea as a single person, right? But you need a whole organization around that, right? You need so many brains and so many hands that has to come, right? And those hands must understand why they are actually doing it. The alignment needs to come. There is a messaging that needs to go out. People have to invest in the vision and then start coming in. And even to do that, to send the message out, there was a cash that was needed. There is an effort that needs to be needed. There are people need to be acquired. This was the chicken and egg that we were stuck with, and this kind of breaks the chicken and egg for us, right? And this is when the action will be seen now, right? And we are very excited about the phase that's going to come now, and we will be quickly scaling from what we are as a 15-member team now, all the way to probably a 100-member team by this year end, right?
Wow.
And we will also be scaling our operations, like Nikhil was actually mentioning, specifically he was actually mentioning about, this is the phase where, you know, a child becomes an adult, right? The growing of age, coming of an age, right? This is the coming of an age phase. This is the teenage phase. In fact, there will be a lot of chaos to be expected. So all the promises that we are doing is potentially possible, except that it's also in how experienced are we in executing it. Except this is when you're doing something very new, you can't expect that someone has already done it and there is an experience already there. So you'll have to learn on the go. So this is the teenage phase. You're figuring out who you are, right? But you're also delivering to the world. You're not anymore in the cocoon where someone is just, you know, pampering and then keeping you. So this whole ecosystem of people are going to come around. Inside is going to be employees, outside is going to be the vendor ecosystem, investors, and the customers who are going to help us go around, and we have to start delivering. So and that's going to be a significant focus on processes, because that's the maturity indicator, right? So that we can, the processes often come not for the sake of the process, right? To show off as if, you know, it has an utility. The utility is to give consistent output and utilitarian output and get to that utility to the customers, right? So I have technology, all fancy, but how am I going to use it? Am I able to use it every day? Am I able to use it every day for next 5 years? Can I assume this technology can work, or do I have to go prepare, right? These are the challenges that we are going to face, and often I come from an engineering. All of us are engineers, right? So yeah,
I am a pseudo engineer. I'm a pseudo engineer, but
so and the organization predominantly is a technology organization, and it's a bunch of engineers at the end of the day. So we are unfairly biased towards having ideas and somewhere conceptually getting your technology right, but that doesn't get you anywhere, right? Purpose of all of this is that someone should be able to use it, and the beauty of any product, the best product would be the thing that you don't even realize that you're using it. It needs to become that simplified and that perfect. That's the journey that we are going to focus now, and we need to get that right. We need to have that seamless support. So I also want to add a little bit on this. So again, to structure it, right? I'm not sure if you had a question around that, but often idea is the first portion where you have the concept, right? Which means, have you identified the right problem? Have you identified the right solution? But right after that comes your ability to build the team to execute or get to the reality, right? Design and get to the reality, and then get it executed and managed, and then start making the product absorbed by some customer. And then comes your ability to manufacture and then supply it. That's a problem that misses typically in a pure software play. For us, we have that problem also. Again, have you designed the manufacturing right, and can you execute it? And the cost is a part of the technological problem. Often we think cost is, it's completely isolated. I have got something working, on machine works and then does the activity that you wanted. But at what cost? Because cost is effort. Money is effort at the end of the day, right? And technology is all about removing effort. Then if I have not brought the right cost and the right pricing into that place, right? That discovery it's also is another huge journey that we have to go through, and it has an impact of the whole organization, how the whole organization works, right? We need to figure that out, right? We have a notion about it. We had a concept of how about a machine that we want to build. Now we have a concept of how that organization is going to get it to the utility, right? That experimentation also has to happen, and that's the experimental phase that we are getting into. And then we have to have a product that is sellable. It makes the sales journey much easier, which often means that you're utilizing the social capital of people ready to absorb it like a sponge. Where exactly are you pouring the water? Are you pouring on the concrete or are you pouring on the sponge, right? And how should the sponge absorb it? What's the mechanism? Sometimes you have to build the sponge. It may not be there. You have to build that sponge, right? That's the whole ecosystem of, B2C will have a distributor network, dealership network, and you might have, no, I want to have a support and service. Along with that, it needs to go as an application, not as a product, right? Or it can be a technology base on which others can build. So these are all multiple ways by which you can reach there, right? Often people always come with a hypothesis of this is how I'm going to go, but that discovery has to happen with the customers, because today it might be this. 3 years down the line, the customers don't want this, right? They might want something else, right? That I need to keep it modular, right? That modularity is something that we have to figure out, and we will be building that. And right now we are going to prove this is the phase where we are going to prove that portion. Then comes the customer, actually the sale completes when the product fails. But the product must fail 5 years down the line. Till then, my engineering needs to extend all the way till the customer keeps using it, which is my support infrastructure and service infrastructure. That's the whole sector that we also have to identify. And often when you are building a new technology, it's hard to understand where the problems will come and how the problems will actually come from. So this is the key important journey that we're going to keep executing, right? So
I want to add a couple of perspectives on why Seinler is very particular about investing in processes. And this idea or this concept is very closely tied in the sector or the space that we are in also, right? And the keyword here is automation. Basically, the goal to have processes is not to make our jobs easier. Right? It's not to say that, hey, today we're doing 100% job, tomorrow we're not going to be doing 80%, we're going to be doing more than 100%. There are 3 ways in which we can scale. One is to add more people. Right? Just add more and more people and you scale. Right? The best that you can do by adding just people is a proportional growth. Right? Doing X amount today, 2x the team, 2x the output. And interestingly, if you see the history of humanity, until about 1800s, the GDP of the world was just growing as proportional to the population growth, and nothing else happened. And then the entire industry started investing in what we call as processes, which is to organize that people, right, in people form itself, to work in a specific way, work in a pre-designed, well thought of way, in such a way that the moment you start working together as a process, even if it's just driven by people, you start getting geometric increase in output. And that's what happened in the first and the second industrial revolutions, right? So you started having assembly lines. Say, hey, people don't do output the way you want. All of you work in a particular way, and then you have geometric improvement in that output. The kicker comes in when you reach a stage, and you need to first automate with people before you can reach that stage. When you start finding ways to automate tasks without having people involved. And that's when you start growing exponentially. So for Seinler to grow exponentially, we have 2 things to do right now. Until now, we have intelligent minds coming together, contributing, innovating, disrupting, etc., etc. And we can grow proportionally right now. Right? So we have an 8-member team, we have a 40-member team, we have 5 times the growth, but we don't want 5 times the growth. Our investors are not investing in us for 5 times the growth. They are investing in us for returning their fund, which is 100 times the growth. And therefore, for us to achieve that 100x growth or that 1000x growth, today we need to start investing in processes. Initially, that processes will be executed by smart people. And as we go, we will continue to invest in tools and automation that allows us to eventually start doing everything at an exponential scale. And that's how the entire journey is going to have in my opinion, I'm going to have a pre this funding phase and a post this funding phase. So post this funding is all about how we can move from proportionally scaling to, in the near future, geometrically scaling, and in the immediate next future, exponentially scaling.
So just some clarity that I also want to add along to this point, right? It's a beautiful comparison that Nikhil is actually bringing, right? So how that often when we think about automation, if I ask you to just close your eyes and then imagine what automation is, and visual, because we understand words by visualizing something in our mind. The moment you close your eyes and then say the word automation, what appears to your vision, right? Machines, some robots, probably now cars and things and whatever. That's what we think. We never think people. We never think people as part of the automation, right? The point about science, point about technology, or point about anything that you actually think about, right? So any application, tools and things that you're using is to minimize effort. The place where the science comes in is that the person who created it doesn't have to be there. You just have a set of procedures. Anyone who's able to follow should be able to, should be able to replicate the same output, right? That's empirical science. Now, the point of a process is just that. You don't have to have the same person. It can be any person. The first way by which you automate is you automate with people, right? The person who did it, if I am the inventor who invented it, if I am the only guy who can make it run, it uses its loss. I mean, the invention loses its use, right? So that has to transform, right? The reality is, if you look at the humanity as a history, I don't think there's one person who actually thought about it, and that everybody tries to be that one person who makes it run, but unconsciously you're pushed to the point where you have to make it in such a way that anyone can use it, right? It's not only the inventor of the car who's able to drive the car, it's anyone who's able to use the car, anyone who's able to build the car, anyone who's also able to repair the car, right? Similarly, an organization is like a invented tool that actually comes, right? Now, there is a laptop, you program, it becomes an application, it becomes an invention, right? The same program that you written for that hardware where you are managing the policies and how they should be run is the process that we have to invent, right? We always invest more on the people and then less on the processes, but actually it has to be an equal balance, or I don't know whether it's equal, I don't say equal, it's fair, equity. It's the right fair proportion. Balance. Yeah, the fair balance needs to come, right? Process automates more, right? And without that, you cannot scale. So that's the understanding with which comes, right? Process is also an essential employee. If you're going to groom an employee you're going to identify an excellent talent and you're going to groom them and you're going to build them for you, then you also have to groom the process. Treat the process like another employee in your organization. So that employee is something that you're going to acquire or probably build, right? So that's one significant portion of what you're going to do in this space.
So fair answer, fairly well thought out, I must say. I don't know if you did this verbatim or you had thought about this in depth. But there is one thing, I mean, multiple things that I can latch on from here on. But there's something that caught my eye, and I really want you to tell me about that, right? Gokul, you mentioned that the stage at which you have reached right now, you should have reached 3 years ago, and you were trying to raise money for that long period, right? And Nikhil, you also mentioned that that capital is a tool that you will use to sort of build in processes and become more mature, as the two of you are talking about. So I want to just hear from you this tough journey of raising funds, because the way you are trying to explain this entire process to somebody like me who's a little more patient, I'm assuming that the venture world, the venture capital world, the employee ecosystem, the vendor ecosystem may not be as patient with you.
Right.
So I'm assuming that you would have faced a, how do I put it, tough journey or an uphill battle with that. So I'd love to know more about that, if you can share that.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Gokul was mentioning that we've raised a $4.5 million round now. We wanted our seed round to be about $3 million. This is a pre-series A round. And the seed round, we wanted to have been raised 2-3 years back, because that's when we believed we knew the ingredients and we knew the recipe to put this thing together, and we knew that that's the minimum. In all fairness to the world, I personally believe, and I'll speak for myself over here, is that, and I think this is a cliched comment, right? So being early is the same as being wrong, right? Just because we wanted something 3 years back, it might have been too early. And then we have had a fairly long journey. One thing that has kept us going is Gokul and I have had this germinate and generate over a much longer period. We've known each other for more than a decade now, and the genesis of this idea is much longer than the fundraising experience that we really have. And thankfully enough, the crux of what we're trying to build and the fundamentals of what we are trying to build was deep enough that the problem stays relevant even 3 years hence, right? And hence, it is still a great time to raise money for us, right? I think we're in the right moment to raise that money because the field from a VC standpoint or from an investment standpoint is still nascent, is still not, there aren't too many references to go back to for the investment world to really understand and gauge what we're talking, what problem we're solving, what is the market. In general, we do believe that we have one additional task involved while speaking to a VC or while speaking to an investor, that we have to take the onus to educate the investment market about what we are coming from and where we are coming from, which is an added responsibility that Gokul and I are glad to take. We've had close to about 100 meetings to close this pre-series A round of funding. So in terms of the time and effort, no different from our seed round. But that's okay because the timing is right. And 100 meetings to get the money that we need to grow our team to 100 people is still worth it.
See, they're not entitled to give us anything. That's the first point, right? They are not there to give the money to us. First thing first, all right? And we are very clear about that. Because I'm going to bring some cynicism and I want to say where it's actually coming from, all right? It is just the fact, it's even VC as an ecosystem is a social infrastructure that anyone, we are in a free trade, it's a free world, right? So the accessibility is now accessibility, yes, there is also effort and I'm not belittling there is also the whole problem is VC is just a reflection of the way the world is working. That world also, they also are like a startup, they go and have to raise the fund from someone else and then make the money work for them and then grow, right? So, and at least we have the control of how we want to deploy the money and then do. They have absolutely no control, right? To a certain extent, they can direct through a board meeting and so on and so, but they don't have control on a day-to-day basis, the execution, right? And it's so much of faith, the leap of faith that they take and then they invest in, and I'm very thankful for that ecosystem to be there. I can't be cribbing about even this, probably, even 20 years before, right? Forget 50 years before and whatsoever, right? So I had to be thankful for the ecosystem to be existing. But if that ecosystem has to evolve, I have to point out certain things that it needs to come way and beyond, right? Sam had been really, we are thankful to the people who just said no in the first meeting, right? Who said, we are also thankful to the people. I can't be, I can't say anyone is bad because the people who kept the hope alive, sometimes because often the VC world, kind of frowns on this point that some VCs waste your time, right? The stage matters, right? For our stage, the hope matters the most. Someone who was able to prolong us to the point where even if they were not the VC, they kept us trying. The hope that they might actually come and take the bet on us kept us going, that we could wait for the next person. There is a lot of time and alignment that also comes. So this is how the general capital structure is. When I'm saying the social capital structure is. The issue that I face in this case is the lack of clarity, because it's not that just we are losing the opportunity, right? In the hindsight, they are also losing the opportunity, right? They are in that game too, right? And often I say there are trend followers and trend setters, right? Many of them do have a significant proven model. The risk averseness, they are more like mutual funds that is actually transforming into that rather than becoming the venture part of some of our investors. Some of the investors typically, right, in general world also talk about it, right? Of course, not everybody can do everything. They are actual venture capitalists in certain portions and certain portions they are not, right? So So that's very clear. But wherever they are not, and if I fall in that category, and I am just trying to put that portion. Fourth, right? The venturing aspect needs to come from a perspective where they need to gather the insights from outside. We have why there was 100 meetings. What are we doing? How many repeats were there? What is that we are trying? The biggest problem that we have is unlearning. Educating is also something that you can enjoy, right? Making them unlearn is the biggest, right? There is a wrong knowledge capital that's been built, or wrong. There's no right and wrong. There's a misconceptualized knowledge capital that's been built and then propagandized around the thing, right? And on the other hand, the knowledge about this world of machinery, the moment you say automation, there is something that we have all biases. When I say automation, just like when I ask you to close your eyes and tell what automation is, you're imagining machinery, right? Very similar to that, everybody has that visualization is your bias about that subject, right? The moment I talk about robots, they already decide this is where it can be applied. And this is how that industry must be. But most people do not come from that industry. Except there is somewhere they are forced to not be okay with not knowing it, right? And some effort, so of course if I go there, they will again say that, hey, just for one startup, I can't go and learn about manufacturing. I can't step inside and spend my time learning everything about manufacturing or the other worlds. Like, what's the difference between electronics manufacturing and an automotive ecosystem manufacturing? How the ecosystem actually even breaks down is quintessential for you to be able to assess where the value is, right? It's not about whether I'll be able to achieve it or not. That they are excellent with, because they have seen umpty number of people bigger than us, better than us, more capable than us, right? And less capable than us, and charlatans and whatnot, right? The problem is to assess the market. That's where the problem is. Assessment about us, we are okay with, right? In all fairness, we have to keep repeating, even to the 100 people we'll have to, right? The problem that we have is that's a social capital that should have been built, and I am too small. I'm too small and blessed with too less to be able to do that, right? That somewhere we need to work together. I need to be able to mobilize this. Look at this as a domain. There is much lesser representatives from, in fact, in one other session that we had been talking to where you were also hosting it, right?
Yeah.
So with our VCs and the industry stalwarts who had been sitting here, frankly, there is much lesser representation into the VC world from that sector, a hardware-rich sector, right? Second thing I want to place is everybody is betting too much on software, right? So we are essentially a software company, right? To core and core, we are an essentially software tech company. Technology that we build is founded on the software basis. The whole point is software is nothing without the hardware. At the end of the day, you need a hardware to do that. Don't underestimate that domain, right? $12 trillion is the software. I checked yesterday. So $12 trillion is the software world's total GDP that we have today. $82 trillion is the total GDP per assessments, right? Several different assessments per assessments. The global sizes, what do you think the rest is? Be it from your foot to the dress that I wear, to the air that I breathe, which is out of the AC, to the light that I'm actually having now, to the camera that is actually looking at me, to the phone that I hold in my hand, to the watch that I wear, to the belt that I wear, right? To the shoes that I wear, and the food that you ate. Everything comes from hardware. Everything is physical, right? They're all objects. We're talking about data, which is just sensory aspects of just someone saw that, someone captured in something, right? That's the data that we're talking about. There is a huge potential out of this. And I'm not talking for just us as a startup, right? I'm talking to the whole hardware world, which is dying on a day-to-day basis, right? Somewhere that potential needs to be brought out. I'm not saying that, hey, just because I'm making this fiery speech here that you need to start going and then investing in there. Somewhere we need to actually assess the value about it. Today, we are always seeing from the lens of how fast the software was able to build the value. What we don't realize is for the software to work, there is 60 years of ICs and computers to grow to the point where you're able to do this, right? And those years of whatever that has been done, the investments that were done and the VCs is a very, very long journey, right? It starts from Edison's time, right? Yeah. So it's not very new, right? It used to be unstructured, now it's getting structured. That's the only difference. From when I look back at the history, that needs to be not left out. People are looking at phases. They say that's the electronics phase. This was the car phase. this is the data phase. Don't look at phases. You need to keep sustaining it. You will exhaust and then now you will be standing at a point where you have nothing. This should have also been gone parallelly. It should be on top of it, not in replacement of hardware, right? So and we need that connection coming back from that world, right? And there is an unfair value assessment problem between what hardware is and what this thing is. Of course, commoditization is something that we will keep bringing back, saying that it's too thin a margin, but it's also too large a volume, right? And too large an ecosystem of see, the money is representation of value at the end of the day. My share is my own currency, right? That's even more powerful. So we need to invest in the ability to mobilize the value ecosystem, right? And hardware has it very, very rich, right? And that's the passionate pitch that I want to put forth, right? And this is the problem that we are that somehow we hope the times would change. And I'm definitely seeing a lot of them turning their eyes and then looking at these places, right? We need more of these risk takers, more than the risk takers, assessment of the fundamentals of the value chain. Come back to the fundamentals is what I would request. Let's not think from the derivatives of, oh, this is how the value chain has worked, and today it has been derived to an instrument called software, and software is where everything actually happens. It can happen in the hardware world also, right? We just have to make it right, right? So that was the reason it was very hard for us to put, and that's the fight that we are doing. And somewhere this sensationalization is also going as message, right? Because today the information is through the digital medium, and the digital medium is unfairly controlled by the people who actually built it. You have Google because you start with Google, right? You have Facebooks, you have, and what they set as a narrative becomes a narrative of the ecosystem and the thing. But behind the background, it is working so well that we don't realize that there is so much more value that we are consuming on a day-to-day basis, except that we are not paying conscious attention to it. And one more point I also want to bring: there's a very huge difference between value traders and value creators. Everybody will do a creation, but is their end outcome is to trade value, e-commerce and things that, right? You can't take that template and then fit it into this business, right? And maybe there was a question already, but I want to bring this point, right? As a beautiful analogy that I always, personally, that I come from a family which is rich with farming, right? So, and this is something I have noticed every time. And now, there are several kinds of plants which give you value. Everybody is there because to give you value, right? If I take a melon for the case, a melon plant is just probably, a couple of kg. It will be spread all about. But each melon is probably around 4 kg to 3 kg. And in a season, one plant will actually give you around 100 of them. Close to a ton of material fertility has been just removed and then shipped somewhere, right? And it just dies in 6 months, right? You exhaust when the fertility is already built and it's ripe, right? There are other kind of systems which actually change the ecosystem for themselves, usually the trees and the plantations. Am I a startup which is building the plantation? A bamboo shoot spends, I have seen a coriander, you drop them, 45 days, they grow, they sprout, they grow, they germinate, they give the fruit, and then they die, right? The bamboo took more than 6 months for it to shoot out. Till then it was just putting the roots so strong, building the whole ecosystem of fertility, water and everything around for it. And every day it grows a feet for next 12 years, right? So am I a bamboo shoot or am I a coriander, right? So how do I classify myself? Where am I actually putting, right? So, and that pretty much depends upon what kind of value that you bring, right? Am I a fruit that's going to bear a lot more? Am I a dividend-rich system? Or am I a competitive value transacting system where my value comes in the volume of transaction or on the unit value that I produce every time, right? I'm a product company on the other hand, right? How do you assess us? So there has to be some, because there is too short a time, and in a day-to-day basis they see thousands of, in a year they would see 1,000 startups, right? 1,000 pitches. They don't have time to go through, right? So somewhere, I'm not blaming them. They also are constrained by it. I'm just saying we have to work together to figure out some way to make the classification very clear, educate it. Do not, and they're also in the pressure to not to act like they do not know, because it's a problem of idiots like us, the founders, who come with a lot of attitude and arrogance, and then we sit in front of them and then put them in the spot, right? And they don't know whether I am that person, I'm not that person,
Yeah.
right? So we don't allow them to let their guard down. That also needs to come down, right? Everybody has value. Everybody is doing something phenomenal and useful for the world. That the technology world needs to understand that education is also lapsing from this side, right? So that this is a very complicated problem for me, and somewhere I'm just trying to see to make it as a debate or bring it forth so that we can address it, right? So and I don't know how, right? But this is the struggle that we're actually having. If it's these are the struggle that is minimized for other startups because the ecosystem is already ripe, right? They don't have to go through that. Some of the comments that we got is, or this is the most prominent. If I put the bell curve of what kind of feedbacks that we have got, most investors just responded back saying, "You guys are amazing. If you did anything else, we would back you up." Right?
Verbatim, right? Like one statement was, if you were half as smart and you were in edtech, I would have funded you.
Verbatim, ditto what they actually said, right? So that
Yeah.
I don't know how to fight it, but yeah. So
Wow. Okay, so when we met for the first time, you showed me this grand vision map of how you see the world to be in the next 100, 200 years. You didn't give me a number that it will take 50 or 100 or 500 years, but you are sure that you will spend your life chasing that.
Let's keep it 100 because we're in that 100x.
100x, okay, 100 years. So you said that you want to make that in 100 years, right? I mean, and you said that this is the vision of the world for you guys, and then you will want to play a role in reaching there. Hopefully, be at the middle of it so that you can return the money to your investors and make the team rich and make whoever wants to be part of our ecosystem become better. But just want to understand that after this fundraise has happened, and you are now in the youthful phase, the coming of age phase for you as a company, how do you think that vision document changes? Just want to pick your brains on that. I have some postulations around it, but I would like to hear from you and Gokul and Nikhil, both of you, on the change that will happen there.
Sure, I'll take a quick stab at it, and then I think Gokul can take a longer stab. Right? So
always.
So for us, and if we get an opportunity to present that map, right? So the map is a map, right? Journey can vary. Map remains the same, right? So you have a vision. It's all possible with this starting point. See here, we've already reached here. Probably have some fuel, right, and a vehicle, and you can take a journey through the map, right? So getting this funding is important because we get fuel, which means that we don't stay in that same pin location in the map, but we actually move ahead. But there's a world of possibility on how we want to traverse the map as we go. And I think we will be doing this very strategically. We will react. We will think. We will see what the next 1 year holds for us, where we are, what constraints we are, and within these constraints, what portion of the map we should probably be conservative on because we probably don't have enough influence to solve, and what portions of the map we will just hit the ball out of the park, and we go about hitting that ball out of the park for that portion of it. Right? So the map for us is the landscape, it's the playground, it's the overall scene, the rules we hope to set ourselves, and then play the game as we go. And of course, what these individual landmarks are, what these individual geographies are, what are the characteristics of that, we could probably write a book about it, and people can definitely talk about it.
And Saurabh will help us write that. So like Saurabh is like, go. Go. So it's an injustice to the audience without showing the map, right? So what exactly? Yeah. So probably we'll attach it as part of the video when we put this vision map. But what that map is a bunch of, just a description. It's a bunch of science fiction that we have imagined, right? We have lived through. In fact, there is one question that we must relate to back, right? So in spite of all this difficulty, why would you, when investors are ready to actually invest in you?
In
EdTech and FinTech and whatever, right? So whatever that they find is more valuable and they can quickly get to the value. why are you still sticking with this? It's a 10-year long journey. We have been doing this one thing, 10-year long journey, right? Because of the vision map, right? Because that's the science fiction we are living in our head with, right? We don't know when it will be possible, right? Every science started as a fiction at some point of time.
Yeah.
It was God at some point of time, right? And you wanted to become that God. Gods flew, so we wanted to fly, and today we have airplanes, right? God could go under the water, then we have submarines, right? So could float with iron on the water, we have ships, right? So what not, right? So they could teleport themselves, and we have video conferencing and this spreading to everybody at every point and all that, right? It's a science fiction map that we actually have, and if our technology that we are building now, if it becomes fundamental or foundational to everything that's been built, and people are thinking their day-to-day solutions, engineers are thinking their day-to-day solutions using our technology as the basis, how would the world transform? What all things could actually change? Like one such example that I can bring is, we talk about consumer mining, right? It's an interesting idea where whenever we want to build, let's say I have this phone, I want a new phone, right? Where am I going for the raw material from this, right? It comes to another economics of why the price of this phone and everything, it's all about labor. Right? And it's an independent debate of another 2 hours or what it is and how it is, and with me might be 2 days. But we always look for new material coming from earth, we start mining. Why? Because it's easier from a human effort point of view, to either from brain, applying mind, and then trying to figure out how it can, from the mud that is there becomes a silicon becomes an IC becomes a solid PCB and whatever, right? So and a screen and a phone and the apps on top of that, right? The ease of, in spite of all this activity, it still feels less of an effort to be able to draw from the earth and then start doing it. If that effort was free, it was not done by a human. Effort is all about pain. Human effort is all about pain. We measure something is hard or easy on how much pain we endure in doing that. And if it was done by a system which cannot sense the pain, how would the world change? How different would it be? We talk about recycling. Recycling is more about repurposing, right? That's how we are approaching recycling. We are not essentially bringing the material back in the raw format to be able to build the same old phone that you wanted out of a discarded phone, right? So that's simply because I'm not able to. So I have damaged it, I have mixed things up, there is some dust sticking onto it, it's not of the same purity and clarity. The purity is all about your ability to separate it. If the ability to separate it is very dynamic, not in a very consistent manner, not in a predictable manner, like we were talking about processes just a few minutes before. So it's not such process-oriented task where you have to dynamically adapt and then start doing it. If that effort was free, which is what we give, right? Seinler is building autonomous labor, right, of future, right? And universal autonomous labor for future, right? If that could actually happen, a cybernetic labor, right? So that can actually happen. That can change our outlook about Earth being the source of all the material, and look at the consumers as the source of all material, right? Imagine whatever that you leave out is my material for me to again build back. When I have that, the impact is far reaching, right? So the way your housing will change, right? Your basements will be something else. You will have robots sitting there. You will not be, instead of pipelines, you will actually have pipelines of different segregated garbage that is going in, and there are people, the garbage becomes gold mine for you. You are segregating out, and then because the effort is simplified. And we always talk about supply chain which is converging to a consumer, right? We never talk about the dispersion chain after that, right? The divergence chain. From a consumer, I consume all this, and then where does it go? Eventually, the final point where it goes is your dustbin, right? Instead, after this, again it goes back to the jeans industry, it again goes back, where did I buy this jeans from? I bought it from that shop and so on, somewhere else. Where did I buy this mobile phone from? I bought it from somewhere and so on, so there. Where did I go for food? That restaurant, and that, where did they source from? You see, that's all the whole world converging into that one consumer, which is me, right? And you and everybody, right? Now, after I have consumed it, where does it go back? How does it actually go back, right? That is very beautiful. The way I'm able to imagine that whole thing, right? If I'm imagining then how would your kitchens be? How would your food be? How would your agriculture be? How would your factories be, right? How transformative your factories be, right? how the restaurants would change and how even the agriculture and the farming would change, how the food supply chain would change, how your factories which produce those food would change. How the structure of the factories can become universal factories, right? So this is the broad vision that we actually had, and the execution changes. What we are doing is only an add-on. We are not changing hard. The question was, how would you
The vision map.
how the vision map changes because of this money? The vision was beyond this cash, right? This cash is going to just enable us. So what are the process and things that we are actually bringing is on top of this vision, which what we are saying is we couldn't do it before. Now we are getting inching closer. It's not that with this money you will be able to do it, but this will get us closer to it, right? Make the next proof of concept to the world that we could actually make it, utilizable, bring it to utility to someone's hand and then someone else be outside of this organization to feel it, to utilize it. So nothing changes from that. Maybe some things can get accelerated. Most of this vision I was saying, it may not happen in my life.
Yeah.
I may not live to see it, right? We don't know. It's just like what Arjun was saying about the Bill Gates quote, right?
Yeah.
So we always overestimate what we do in a year, what we can achieve in a year, and underestimate what we could achieve in a decade, right? So I don't know. Many of these might be possible. Some of these ideas about the kitchen and things seems to be already happening, right? So we'll wait and see. But otherwise, for us it's a plus. It's not a transformation or a pivot or a change on any sort, right? If at all we are pivoting more closer to the vision. We might have been thinking to, just sustain ourselves. Our pivot will only be towards sustaining ourselves in a different way. If at all it's breaking, but the vision always stays as the vision, right? That gets us going, right? So,
Nikhil, you want to add something?
Yeah, so I just want to attempt a bit of a visualization on the entire piece of consumer mining that Gokul initiated, right? So today, more or less the way the world works is, here is raw materials which is provided by the earth. You need to extract it out, which is ore, mining and all of that, and then you do multiple layers of processing on top of that, right? So you create materials out of that, you form that materials into specific forms and then put them together, and then you find ways to move that material from one location to another through distribution channels, through warehouses, then to your stores, and then you consume it, right? As people, you go buy these hardware. And once you're done with that hardware, you have government agencies or whatever that allows you to dispose of that hardware. So there's a collection of that hardware that happens. More or less all of it just goes into the land dump, which is the dump, right? So if you just look at the flow, right? So there is raw material and then material extraction, then product assembly, warehousing, and then dump. That's what happens. It just goes like that. At best, what recycling does is that in this chain, I put one loop, right? Maybe another loop, and then it again leads to the dump. And that's what's really happening. And in this entire process, what's really moving that material from raw material to land dump eventually is labor that happens throughout. And that labor today has to be human. And that's the largest economy, right? Largest part of your economy per se. The single largest proportion of what humanity does is manual labor today.
And labor, by the way, what we mean is not just the physical labor. People always think it's hands and
legs.
Even your brain is also a muscle. And whatever you're thinking is actually, the only problem is this poor thing does not feel pain. So we always undervalue the capability of the mind, right? It's the mind which looked at the mud and then saw steel in it, right? And another mind looked at the steel and then saw a car out of it. Another mind is seeing an autonomous car out of it, right? It's a human mind which creates those possibilities of whatever the material. Everything is the material that we have here, right? And the utility comes by extracting that shape. Right? Since everybody understands software, that's what is the most buzz in this world. So you program a laptop to make you give the output that you want. That's what your application is, right? You program the material to give you that utility that you want. You want some material to stop me from falling to the floor out of gravity. I just created a shape which will. So what we do in all the other engineering physical means is just programming the shape out of the material. So that's essentially a combination of the psychological work, labor, and the physical labor, the P&P labor, right? So that yeah, I'll let you.
So today for this entire cycle, even if you have a recycle loop in between, finally goes to that land dump. We are not really able to make that into a full circle.
Yeah.
Simply because for it to become a full circle, the granularity that you have to go in the disintegration and then reassembly of it is so humongous that we really don't have the human capital to get that labor done. Right? If only humanity was blessed with, let's say, an abundant availability of labor to do that task, right? Let's say I can just put how many ever people as I wish to do that recycling, I could have done that. And that's a vision that inspires us, because what we are building today is the genesis of what could be a reasonably universal form of fully autonomous labor alternative that in the long run can give us that abundant capital to get that entire cycle of material from raw material to product to distribution to consumer mining to disintegration back to raw material, so that you have that full
the other side of the
sustaining cycle
labor needs to be closed.
really possible, right? And that, for all what is worth on the debate on sustainability, for all you know, this is what is
the crux.
really the missing link.
Yeah, the missing link.
To sustainability.
So I'm going to interrupt the flow of thought that you guys have, and I'm really intrigued to know that why do you think this is not happening today?
Yet.
So I mean, either of you could take a stab at this, but I think this could be a interesting way to at least convince me that this future is not just science fiction, as Gokul mentioned, but we could go towards that.
Right. So I think this question again is coming from the obvious understanding that, hey, but you're talking about labor being relieved, automation is already there. We see robots everywhere on a day-to-day basis, that there is so much of machinery that's been laid down, and there's factories, and we did speak that everything that we consume today has come out of factory, right? And which means that already the technology has been established, right? One thing I again want to ask is the largest contributor of value today, or it's still the wages that we pay to the manual labor. I'm not talking about the white collar, right? I'm talking about the blue collar, physical. Obvious reasons that they'll say that, hey, the labor is cheaper, right, than machines. I would again ask the question, why are the machines costlier, right? Simply because again somewhere you are not able to automate that process, right? So, but anyways, coming back, right? It's the incapability of those machines to be as adaptive. Whatever the tasks that we were able to achieve without applying mind, where it's a monotonous task, those things had been replaced by dumb machines, mechanical machines already, right? Electromechanical, mechanical, programmed machines, whatnot, right? Pre-programmed. Most of the systems are pre-designed and then being kept, right? Yet there seems to be a need for some labor where you need to be very dynamic, right? Your ability to adapt to the environment and then start doing things, right? Of course, then again, that the next question would come, but isn't there ML and AI and systems that are? What they are and where they are is a different, debate altogether. More of a discussion than a debate, right? And it's 4 years back it was a debate because everybody were gung-ho that, including the phenomenons like Elon Musk, right, went wrong in that one particular point, right? But today the realization is dawning, right? I just read 3 days back Jeffrey Hinton talking about AI is definitely going to be the future, except that we haven't got it right, right? So that's and I really appreciate the fact that they're coming on and talking about it, because they for the place they were, they could still be pushing, saying that hey is all done, right? So it's your incapability to apply it. That's where they might actually, they can take the stance. If they take the stance, the society will rearrange themselves to figure out things that they can utilize through that, and then throw the things that doesn't fit to that genre, right? And often we do that. That's how technology gets adopted, right? And there's so much of social capital in that. Except if I go to a factory today, a robotic arm, after all the hype, is nothing but just like your electric car has 4 motors, it has 6 motors on top of each other. Just a chain link which is free to move, and you are putting that, right? But yet again, you take all the factories and universalization of the factories. If you want a technology to be able to solve this manual labor, then you need to make this as one unified problem, right? Before you could build a product for the customer as a solution, because you build products as solutions for the customers, you need to productize your problem. You need to identify the productized problem. The technology that is there today, you will have a robotic arm, you have a teach pen and nobody sits and codes anymore. You will ask it to go to this location A, record that position, use your joystick to move to the location A, record the position, go to location B, record that position, right? And you will have a gripper, which is not even part of the robotic arm. You'll have to custom build the engineer the gripper. You will give a signal to it. When I'm in location A, close your gripper. Go to location B, you will give another signal, release your gripper, the part will fall there, right? This is how much it is there. Somewhere you will also add sensors. You will say, hey, some navigations and things. So you will have one pre-programmed position of the camera or wherever it is moving. You will take one snapshot, you will do pattern matching and all that, right? The moment an object starts tilting even by an angle, right? So if I ask, let's say you have a black diary, can you just hand me that?
That's my notes. I can't handle.
So I won't know your secrets. So they both are like black objects, right? If I ask you, are they both same? You'll say no.
Absolutely.
Why? The dimensions are different, the shape is different, the behavior is different, right? So anything that has two different shapes, you'll always call them as two different objects, isn't it? The same object start rotating in a different orientation. Its dimensions are different, right? Its dimensions are different. The shape is different. In each angle, you are seeing different objects, and an object is an infinite number of objects. The moment it starts changing its orientation, the system goes haywire. How does a image processing system will connect that this object, if I rotate this way, will show me this shape? And how much of this information will I be able to collect? This is a huge limitation that we are actually seeing. Human beings are not doing pattern matching. They are not having templates. You have never seen my hand before, right? But the whole AI world is always going on the fact that I should have trained with millions of data. We are not born with millions of data. A baby will go and grab whatever that you give in its hand, right? It may not know whether it's on phone, but it will know to grab, right? It knows where this is. It knows to operate. Only thing that we teach is, we don't teach them the ability to grab, right? Pick. We teach them how not to damage this, what is the right kind of grab and what is the wrong kind of grab for a given task. We teach them purpose of grabbing, right? That's what we actually teach them. So if you have to get to the point where you can program machines to be automatic, first we need to build machines where you don't have to teach them how to go grab. You need to teach them which they will do autonomously. You have to guide them what is the right kind of grab and what is the wrong kind of grab. That's the missing technology that is there, without which the dynamic tasks are impossible. And simplest example of dynamic task is the moment I change the orientation, right? And people would say, hey, I have seen conveyor belts move from so many places and so. Conveyor belts retain the orientation and only change the location, right? They are 2D location systems. The 3D conveying system is your robotic arm, except it's not dynamic, it's static today. The dynamism comes out of your visual capability. Even for human beings, it's the visual capability, right? Hey, we'll say we have touch sense and all that. I would just give a thought experiment again, right? You have a blind man and you have a person who has leprosy, right? Leprosy person actually loses all his, let's say you have put your senses, right? You have put your hand inside a freezer and there are some people born without senses in the hand, right? If someone is supposed to go and manipulate an object, who do you think will be more faster, precise, efficient, and whatnot? What are the metrics to measure? Obviously the person who has the eyes, but might lack the senses of touch and feel in their hand, right? So you throw a ball at them, who has the best chance of grabbing? Only in the movies you'll have this blind, all trained and things, but in casual system it's not feasible, right? That faculty is not being talked about at all. That faculty is not even being looked at. We have simplified the portion of vision, which is billion years of evolution, which came much before your hands and all the other faculty that we might have, and brain evolved along with eyes all through the animal system's evolution, right? And that's something that we never have paid attention to, probably because it is so fundamental. Everything else, we learn to walk, we learn to run, we learn to write, we learn to speak, right? This is all conscious act of learning. We never learn to see. So we lack vocabulary, we lack understanding how this whole complex machinery is working. I want to also add this, put this fact in the recording. At any given point of time, close to 55% of your brain is just about visual processing. Right? And I keep repeating it wherever I get the opportunity, right? The phenomenon of AI that we appreciate it for its ability to do voice assistance and ability to understand NLP and voice recognition and things. And certain places image to a certain extent, image recognitions and things and whatever the data processing units. All the rest of my senses put together is only 7%, including my speech faculty of your brain. And if this was this hard, how much are we underestimating the 55% of our brain, human brain, right? We just have reduced that to just pattern matching, right? And essentially the AI world is looking only from, I have bunch of images, variety over there, how do I force the system to recognize that also has a cat, this also has a cat, this also has a phone, that also has a phone. Yeah. There is no physical logic to that system to connect, right? Often, so I also say this, right? So if I show two hands to the video, right? So in front, right? And then let's say I did this. If I ask you to find whether my hands are touching or not touching, doesn't matter how many millions of samples you take.
Yeah.
In this dimension, you're seeing this orientation in this dimension of data. All it takes is one sample from another third dimension, right? I'm not talking about depth, right here. Yeah. It's about that additional data that you might actually get. And vision is a very holistic sensor. We confuse sight with vision, right? Sight is not vision. What your eye enables is sight. What from your retina and everything else, you making sense these bunch of colors together as a phone is your vision, right? And that happens only when the other sensory faculties overlap on top of each other, right? So if I say orange, how do you make sense of that random pattern of sound that fell in your ears? You start immediately imagining the taste, the smell, the touch, feel, everything that was associated whenever you heard that. What all did your other senses experience whenever you heard that pattern of sound, right? That's vision. Replace that with a color, a pattern of color, and when you look at it, you are already able to feel what it will feel like in your hand, right? Of course, not the smell and taste. Obviously, nobody would have. I hope nobody would have tasted a phone. But yeah, so this is the missing piece. Why the factories and the automation today is not happening, because we have the faculty of hand pretty much rich enough, right? Probably a lot more to be done on the fingers, but even to the two fingers that we can do a lot of tasks are not feasible today, right? Simply because we have underestimated the significant contribution of vision that is needed, or the holistic contribution of vision, if I have to put it in that way, right? So that's the missing piece.
So I want to go back, I mean, this is great, but I want to go back to something that Nikhil spoke very early on about the fundraise process and even the money that you have in the bank. So Nikhil said there are 5-6 things that you guys will work on, so process and machinery and so on and so forth. Yeah. One of the things that piqued my interest, and I am very intrigued about that, is your take on the team and the talent. And I've often heard you guys talk about how the team is the tech that you're building. I mean, it's very, very counterintuitive. It's very, very new. It's interesting to listen to and hear. And I'd love to know your thoughts on this phrase that I've often heard from you guys, that the team is the tech for Scinder. So I want to talk about that.
Right. So I'll begin. Nikhil can just chime in as. So the common understanding for any problem, right, and especially technology startups, we being one, right, it's becoming repetitive, but is that, hey, there is a problem, and somewhere, whenever we say, whenever I say technology, we associate that always with some machine somewhere, right, some fancy code, some algorithm, some geek sitting there and then doing something and all that fancy imagination that we have. I was one, right, and if Jairam was there, he would chime in thinking that, oh, this fellow is just that machine guy, right? So, but when I come from that background, the maturity just takes you somewhere else, right? What we underestimate is, like just few minutes back, we were chiming in saying that it's the mind that looked at something, and then technology happens here. Technology doesn't happen on those materials. Those are just mud that has taken, earth and mud that has taken a different form, right? But the form was realized somewhere in the mind. Right? So if I am saying that there is a problem that's not yet being solved, where is the technology coming from? And by the way, we need to break this word technology, literally, right? It's technique and logic, right? It's study or knowledge of techniques, right? A technique is nothing but a repetitive steps or procedures by which anyone can achieve something consistently, right? And repeat it, right? That's all it is. It can be anything. Your policies that your government is bringing out is a technology, right? Yeah. The whole political system is a technology. My currency is a technology, right? My language, the biggest thing, language we think is is a tool of communication, it's a tool of thinking,
Yeah.
right? Without which I'll not be able to classify this with the other, right? My experiences are labeled by that sound, right? It's the biggest compression tool that we actually have, right? These are technologies, right? And all of them are originating from the mind, and it's for the mind to utilize it, right? So if I have to figure out the missing piece, then I need to figure out the mind which can bring that solution, right? What I'm engineering essentially is not that material, I'm engineering that mind, right? So people are those mind. The technology actually comes out of those people, those minds, and it never is one person, right? Any technology, if you look at a car, there are 1,000 parts put together,
Yeah.
right? If only all the 1,000 parts, small, big, pricey, costly, cheap, doesn't matter. But even that single nut, if it's not there in the right position, in the right place, your car is not going to function,
Yeah.
right? Imagine my company is that technology, that car, right? And the people are each of those components that are going to be there, right? The machine that comes out, the product that I bring out is all different, right? That will happen, right? That's the destination that we want to reach, right? That the output that it actually gives, which is basically making the car move and steer itself and get to the location, whatsoever it is, right? But that whole bunch of parts that you're actually thinking, each of which is the technology that we are putting together, actually those minds that you're putting together, right? It is your talent is the tech that you have, right? It's not the technology that we actually build or the machine that's small boxes and iron boxes and things that we actually build, right? The aluminum boxes that we actually build. It's the people, right? So that's where that insight comes to us. These are the points that me and Nikhil and I kind of feel it. It's not something that we're saying from it's hard learned lessons. We didn't think this.
Is the title of our career page?
Career page, yeah.
But it's not a HR show, right? It's something from it. And one interesting, I hope it's interesting, analogy comes about, right? So I'll take something which like most people understand, right? Say today there's internet. You all understand internet. They say, hey, define internet. Right? And sometimes many of us, especially engineers, talk about, yeah, okay, multiple computers connected together, there's a network, there are undersea cables, fiber net, all of that. Technology allows you to connect computers with each other. But what it really is are tools to connect minds with each other. Yeah. That's what it really is.
Beautiful.
Right? The internet is a network of people. The technology is just the enabler. And that's the same ethos with which we approach the technology that we are building. What we enable or what we create is the collective contribution of the minds that are working on it. There's humongous amount of effort that we will have to take as founders, as an organization, to bring in a certain amount of alignment, certain amount of synergy, what in the engineering world we call as collective interference, constructive interference, not a destructive interference, where each of these vibrations add to each other and have a larger goal. And that's something that we
for
really
some
do.
tech geeks, this is he just let out the FFT, the concept of FFT, right? So yeah.
So, but at the end of the day, what we have to build, I mean, what we have to create as an output is something that can only be created by the right set of minds coming together in a synchronized, in a synergetic manner. And that's what I think for Gokul and me, that's the only job.
So if you understood what Gokul said, FFT or FFD, maybe Sandler is home for you guys to
Thanks.
build the next big thing, right? Okay, so this brings me to the last question that I have, and I mean you can add more questions, but this brings me to the last question that I have. You've often spoken about a lot of barriers that you had to break. Even the act of fundraising was a barrier that you had to overcome, and then there is multiple barriers in terms of the team that we just spoke about, or the ecosystem that we often keep talking about. Even the very fact that it takes a lot to communicate what we are and what is our story is also a barrier of it, right? So I just want to talk about your perspective on what are some barriers that exist. I mean, Gokul famously talks about the VC barrier, the understanding of the VC barrier, unlearning is one. And two, how did you overcome some of those barriers? So maybe talk about a few, and then what you've been doing to overcome those barriers is what could be interesting for me and others to learn about. So yeah, maybe we can start from there.
Right.
I mean, either of you can take a shot at this, but
Right. So whenever we talk about the barrier, one thing that I want to again bring is a company doesn't exist without the social structure, right? The employees who work are the ones who are working under an identity called under this name of as an identity, very closely working with us on a day-to-day basis, daily facing us, right?
yeah,
But there's also a whole ecosystem which is also working around, and we have to leverage that ecosystem, right? These barriers come when we have to utilize those capitals. There is somewhere some entitlement sitting in this, right? So in what we are expecting, right? So when we say barrier, the amount of effort that needs to be put to realign that ecosystem to work, right? Then what are those barriers for, right? For every stakeholder, a company can realize its utility, can deliver its utility only when all its stakeholders are aligned, right? And they are putting their effort into towards it. That includes the customers as the stakeholders, that includes vendors as the stakeholders, that includes the employees in and outside, future and the current employees, the vendors, sorry, I have spoken about the vendors, the investors, right? As the stakeholders, right? So each of them face a different kind of, somewhere all of them are people, and in our way, in our kind of business, everybody wears that cap at different points. Someone who had been part of the investor team can also become an employee, someone who has been an employee can become an investor team or a customer or a vendor, and it just vice versa. Everything is mixed. Often it's the public messaging that becomes sometimes as the barrier, right? Ignorance is one of the biggest barriers that you have to cross. And I often say that the purpose of the marketing should not be to create the need, but to make them educate the need, right?
Yeah.
So that's how it should be, right? So and that's the biggest, that's one very big thing that we actually fight. Why? In the current age, software is the much bigger phenomenon, and the liking towards or anyone to even approach our messaging, right? What are the messages that we put out, right? For them to even open it up and then understand it. Today, software is coming after 20 years of grooming society has done for all of them. Whether you are working in it or not, inadvertently you understand the ecosystem really well, right? Be it a lawyer, be it a doctor, everybody kind of has a perspective about it. But not many have a perspective about how most of the things that are physical actually are being built. There might be siloed set of people who might understand it, but it's not a collective common knowledge that is there. And when the collective messaging is not done, it's harder to mass communicate things. If you're not able to mass communicate things, you don't know where the needle of the talent that you want or the stakeholder who's going to resonate with you is there. How do I reach that person, right? So it's much harder in that phase. And how the mass communication today typically happens is more of a ripple effect. I talk to the first audience who are there, and they start spreading the next other things. That next other things happens only when and the next other ripple, right? They transmit to the next set of people, and the next set of people actually transfer to the next set of people. That happens only if there is a social capital of that being entertaining enough for them, or either it's an entertaining or not, it's utility, right? Some way or the other utility, right? If that utility is being focused more towards the value and the proportion of the utility is more focused towards the software as a field, then that's harder, right? We need to also take that space. Software will be there, whatever that they are, right? They cannot go down, right? Because we also need that. We at least have that. We are thankful that we at least have that happening, right, for us, right? On the other hand, the hardware world is not taking up so much in those cases, right? And the moment the hardware comes, if you remember, I was saying there's 9 types of risks and the company needs to face through, where software doesn't have this manufacturing problem, right? You also have that additional manufacturing problem. My system has 400 vendors of components, and each of them will have another bunch of, that whole ecosystem needs to be moved to invest their time and effort, right? See, when you say time and effort, hey, are they not making products and they are not already making those things? Except he needs to choose to give the product to me, while losing the other opportunity. He has to choose between the customers often. That's an investment that they do in me, right? They will do the investment only if they understand a vision that can be much bigger, right? there is that barrier of realization of, hey, there is a value here that you can actually do. This is the social knowledge barrier that is there. Most people do not even understand what a robot is, right? The knowledge of problem barrier is there. The knowledge of technology barrier is there. There is knowledge of opportunity barrier is there, right? These things each of these are, everything as a barrier is mostly about knowledge, right? And the hardship of the effort and so in general tech, they call the hardware, they call it as entry barrier, heavy entry barrier.
Yeah.
Right? Why? Because not anyone and everyone can go in and then start making those things, right? For me to, if I have a software idea, the investment is much lesser. I'm not saying it's easy. It's definitely not easy. I have to know the tool, I have to know the language, I have to know all of that building ecosystem and things. But for me to get to the proof of concept, is just the amount of physical infrastructure that I have to invest is most probably just a laptop, right? So on the other hand, and people probably, right? We need both. And on top of that, I had 400 other huge infrastructures, right? Ecosystems costing crores together, right? Millions together of cost, right? For me to even get to a proof of concept stage. That's the entry barrier. Imagine a space tech for the case, right? So you can't make a proof of a rocket just making a small, right? The small to large, the system is entirely different. The physics changes entirely, right? And it's so phenomenal that without that bare minimum money that comes in first, you will not be, and nobody responds without having that cash before. So that comes as the capital barrier, right? How do you move the capital barrier? Is because this understanding is, when they come and judge, they think that the technology is already there. This is because of the knowledge barrier, and they think it's just an application away. Why haven't you been able to? Why haven't you been able to put that together? It should be your lapse of your skill set rather than that effort. That's because of the misinformation capital that the society has already built. The undue advantage that many of these AI and the promises that the AI enjoys as a field that enjoys, people overestimate its capability, and they already think that it's there and should be doable, right? But the reality is not being talked about, right? So I don't know whether it's a problem of that world not having voice or that world choosing not to have that voice, right? Because they think it's old and the next new thing is all going to be software, and let's start moving. Because I also see that industry world is moving more towards software, right? Not even towards the EV, right? They were all, their next transition, they were looking at IT services, right? The third generation, fourth generation of that big sectors used to be there. The big names, the OEMs used to be there from name them, right? All across the globe, they are all family houses now, right? So that transition is also somewhere that the people who advise them, it's not going there, right? So there are these multiple barriers that we have to cross, right? These biases that we have to fight, right? So those are the barriers that we need to cross, right? And significant portion of our cash that we have, the raise that we actually have made, will also be inviting people, right? Hey, I see marketing geniuses and people who could do branding phenomenally, but they understand only from a website point of view. When you say, hey, make an API, they invent methods of showing how an API would make your life easy. But when it comes to immediately when I ask them to come, talk about robot, they just go blank, right? It is not that hard. It is not that hard, right? We need people coming their time and effort to invest and to understand that. Of course, they're not building, but they understand to be able to articulate that effectively to those, right? That investment has happened from their side, and they're ready for the industry. The industry, I don't have to hire someone and then groom them. I can hire someone who's ready, right? That the ecosystem also have to. Every ecosystem is aiming to go towards this IIT and cricket. That in India that we have, everybody wants to get into IIT, everybody wants to get into cricket. Now everybody wants to get to somewhere into films. Films also is very rare. In fact, unfortunately, that is much smaller industry compared to what it's supposed to be, right? So, but on the other hand, let's say everybody wants to go towards software, right? Everybody gets into engineering with the imagination, whether you're a mechanical engineer or not. The first thing you start doing is say, open up a Python and then start coding, Python coding, right? We get much better coders from mechanical than from CS world, right? So So just like that, somebody was doing branding, somebody was doing HR, everybody had structured and templatized themselves to train themselves to fit for the software world of things. Plus and plus on top of software also learn this. On the other hand, the existing hardware world, we find it insufficient. They are not aware of the pace. They are not aware of the proportion of value that software is bringing to the world. That's the other side. All this while I was talking about the software, there is a big problem of lack of awareness barrier that I have to cross when I'm talking to my customers also, which is from the hardware segment of the world, right? They've already written off the value in most of those things. So that again has to be revived. So in broad scope, there are several such barriers that we need to do, and everything is rooted in the fact that the information needs to go. We as an individual, as a Singler, as a small setup, we are trying to put our possible effort into it. We hope somebody will also chime in and they will also find value in it, and they'll also start picking the, and hopefully time also pushes them to not be shy of the fact. I remember Rajiv Bajaj or Rahul Bajaj, either of those two, I think in 2009 or 8 or 2004, I think. It was a beautiful article that I read, where he was actually talking about, you know, how sensationalization of software as the only technology. When we today, technology is not anything else. People think it's software is the technology, right? That perspective needs to change. We are engineers, right? That's what he is actually talking about now. Someone who builds the engine is also an engineer. It's incidentally the word comes from there, right? And the etymology actually is ingenuity. That's where the word engineer comes from. Someone who can build something very ingenuine, right? So that's where it comes from. But anyway, right? So that awareness is also coming from that world. They are not anymore shy to, you know, what do you do? Oh, I'm in this automotive and so on. So I don't feel old world, right? I'm not shy anymore. I think that's coming up because EV is giving them that another shot at to be the next new, you know, flag bearers of the forefront technology, thanks to Elon Musk, who took this shy space and then made them have something to feel proud about, right? So that pride capital and pride barrier.
If I may.
Sorry?
Flamboyance got added because of Mr. Musk.
Yes, Mr. Musk, right? So I'm thankful for all the things that there was a point when I was resisting him so badly, but now I revere him, right? Maybe it sunk so slowly to me, but I think in all fairness, it also sunk to him slowly, right? But he's there, right? So
Nikhil, you have something to add on this?
Nothing much on the kind of barriers we're facing. I think Gokul has summarized that. But just to add to the tonality of it, crossing barriers is why we live for.
That's a good.
At the end of the day, we're not afraid of it. We're excited with it. I think there's an adrenaline rush each time you cross, each time you jump a hurdle. And that's what we are here for. I mean, I think that's what probably, if we were not excited about crossing these barriers, we wouldn't be in this job.
Absolutely.
I think fundamentally, I think that's where we.
Got it. I think that's the best, like, 3-word sentence that you've said since I've come to know you. So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. I think this brings me to end of the questions that I have for the time being. If you have any more questions or last thoughts, we can throw in the middle, and then we can all take a break and grab some coffee.
Yeah. So I'm done. I think if I
start for a change.
No, that's being conscious of the time, right? So if I start, then I can speak for next 1 week. These guys actually face the wrath of me speaking for next 6 days together probably. So we will. I think we can continue.
Nikhil, anything from you?
No, I think we've had a great day. So
yeah,
cool.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Thank you, Nikhil. Thank you, Gokul. We had a great day, as you mentioned. I at least learned a lot in this interaction. It also validates a lot of thoughts that I've had in my head, even though I've been associated with you for some time. After I heard you, your team, and some of your early backers, I think I have a fresher perspective. I hope I get to live to see a vision come to life. My plan is to not die, so I hope I'm there to see that come to life. And if there are any last thoughts that you have for the listeners, please go for it, and then we can say goodbye.
Nothing much. I think we're excited. we hope we attract, or some part of that excitement spreads,
Translates into action.
translates, and we're hiring, we're growing. 100 is the target. So we'll get there, and we need about 87, 80, 83 more people. So we're all there, yeah.
Gokul?
That's been a great session, right? And thanks for keeping up your promise that you would bring the thoughts,
Stories.
and the platform, give us the platform where we can share the things that often we don't get to it, right? Of course, there are a lot of eyes that's going to be there on us, and a lot of expectations. We too have the eyes and expectations on ourselves to see where we are and where we get. And we cannot do that. People who made it because people around them trusted in them, right? And it's the whole ecosystem that we need to get there, right? No individual is bigger than the whole ecosystem put together, and we need the support of that ecosystem, and we hope that we give something of value and then convince that ecosystem to to give us that support that we need, and that's the request more than the message that I want to kind of give, and that's what I hope.
Thanks.
Thanks.